Lady Mallalieu, this is your rural life. Welcome to the Farmette podcast.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
What does the countryside mean to you now, at this stage of your life?
It's a very special place. It's so beautiful it makes you cry. My hope is that the distinct difference is preserved, and it's very, very hard to see.
Hello and welcome to the Farmette podcast. I'm your host, Tamara Warhurst, and this is a show where we talk about the importance of the countryside and how it has shaped my guest life. I ask my guests to choose themes from the countryside that have directly impacted their life. My guest today is a farmer, a lifelong horsewoman, and a highly respected criminal barrister for 40 years. She is president of the Countryside Alliance, a long-standing member of the RSPCA, and a passionate advocate for rural communities. She is a Labour peer and in the House of Lords has spoken powerfully on issues ranging from animal welfare and trail hunting to the right of jury trial and assisted dying. Her life has been shaped by the countryside from childhood, and she continues to speak with clarity, independence, and deep personal experience about the challenges facing rural Britain today. Lady Mallalieu, this is your rural life. Welcome to the Farmette podcast.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Oh my goodness, we've got here. We had a little bit of struggle, listeners, getting both of our tech sides working, but we are here. And Lady Mallalieu, I'm just so thrilled that we could get you on the podcast today. And with what is happening in the sort of current world in the UK and Britain, I'm really, really glad to have people like you around and in the House of Lords. Only last week, we've just found out that the Labour government have announced that a consultation to ban trail hunting will go ahead, which could be just completely devastating for rural communities. And last week you spoke, or 2 weeks ago you spoke, and said in the House of Lords and said that this was a real punch in the stomach to our rural communities. How frustrated are you with your party at the moment?
On some issues, very, very frustrated indeed. This is one of them. I wish that we had people who are prepared to talk to the country community, which is, let's face it, the largest constituency in the country, if you put the rural parts together, and one which any government depends on to get an overall majority. They don't seem to be thinking in those terms, but equally there's, I'm afraid, growing hostility, the feeling that these people aren't our supporters, so we'll deal with them. And indeed, I had somebody the other day telling me, well, it's all going to change because so many of our supporters from the towns are moving out into the countryside. They will change things. That doesn't
No,
seem...
they didn't say that.
Yeah. And that was somebody who had, and indeed is now a minister, but in a different department, somebody who had responsibility for the countryside. And indeed, some years ago, I do remember when Alan Michael was very much involved previously when we had the hunting bill debate, him having on the top of his headed notepaper that he was the Minister for Urban Recreation, which is how, I'm afraid, too many people on my side still see the countryside. It's not somewhere where people choose to live a different life and a very productive one. It's somewhere where people really are almost Neanderthal, I sometimes think. They think that they don't have the same emotions and the same ideas. And the tolerance which we do display towards other communities is not granted towards those who want a different way of life in the country.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I slightly feel like, we, as it always happens in politics, I feel no one ever learns from previous years or previous mistakes. And Keir Starmer seems to me that he hasn't even considered the mistake that Tony Blair made when he brought this the original ban in. And surely he must, everyone must be saying, look what happened. It was one of Tony Blair's biggest mistakes that he made in his career.
He is being told that, but he's also being told by a small body of very, very vocal activists who are now embedded in parts of the Labour Party that this is an issue that really matters. Well, with all else that's going on in the world, to actually focus your attention on whether people pull a rag on a string around a field with one sort of scent on or the other is neither here nor there. But
No.
people who feel very passionately about this, and there are for different reasons, some of them genuine animal welfare, some of them, those people have actually joined their local Labour parties and keep bringing it up. And he's got a few MPs whose priorities seem to make this top of the list. It's extraordinary. And I wish somebody, and I wish Tony Blair would tell him.
Yeah, well, I do wonder if he has. I do wonder if he has.
Well, there are people who are telling him just
Yeah.
that. Lady Hunter, Angie Hunter, who was Tony Blair's right-hand woman when he was in Downing Street, said it openly in the Lords the other day that she had told him at the time. He made the mistake then, and she's telling Keir Starmer now, as a number of us are.
Yeah.
I hope still that sense will prevail. I think it must be something that any sensible politician would actually say this was a mistake to make this commitment, and particularly to put
Yeah.
it in the manifesto. That was silly,
Yeah.
because you then tie your hands into something which is going to cause you real headaches when you've got serious priorities that you want to get on with.
Yeah, on a global, global priorities as well as, domestic. But to add that in, I mean, if you were an outsider or a government body from another country, they must be laughing, being like, what are they even discussing over there?
I'm sure that's right. And I have to say, down here where I live in the West Country, we've had visitors this last hunting season from
Yeah.
France, from America, from all over, who come here because this is something which they want to enjoy, because they have it in their own countries, but we have always been the best.
That's the thing. We're the best at a lot of things. And that's what we need to, that's what's so frustrating about our country, is that people want to be British. People adore the British because we are so good at so many things. And when things like this happen, you're just destroying those brilliant things that we're all so good at. And it is, it's the backbone of our country. And it's very frustrating.
I think it's lack of knowledge, I'm afraid. It's total lack of knowledge. I mean, so many people I know, including one former head of the League Against Cruel Sports, who came down, spent time to look at what was happening and get to know the people, and completely changed his mind. And that does happen.
Go.
But it's getting people to come and see, and getting the MPs to come and see, getting the councillors to come and see, and just know the people. They're people just like you, and they just have a different way of life which they enjoy.
Do you think that these MPs who, those Labour MPs, do you think they're worried or scared that if they were to suddenly change their mind, were to educate themselves, were to put themselves within a rural community, that the sort of, I call them keyboard cabbages, that they would attack them, and they're actually more scared of that than changing their mind?
Well, I don't underestimate the pressure that pretty well every MP is under now. Physical threats, and a lot of it, of course, is the change in the use of social media and so on. It's not pleasant. It's not very pleasant being even a Labour peer in the countryside. Got people who blame you, and understandably, for what's going on and what's hurting people. So I think that's right. But we have at least now got over 100 Labour MPs who have rural constituencies, or largely rural constituencies. And they are hearing from people in them and getting to know people in them, the ones who are reasonable and come out and will meet and talk. But of course, there are some who won't at all. Not many, but there are some who really think that this is a totemic issue for the Labour Party, which it stupidly became. Why? Goodness knows. Let's have other totemic issues like protecting the right to trial by jury, which I thought was one of Labour's key values.
Madness, isn't it? Absolute madness. Can I ask, what was life like? Life obviously as a Labour peer now, but what was life like when you first joined as a Labour politician? Was it 1991 that you first joined?
I'm afraid I can't remember the year, but it's rather longer than it should be, I think. But a very different place, the House of Lords. Obviously, you've got a lot more hereditary peers. You knew people. You got to know people. Now there's so many members of the House of Lords I've never exchanged a word with. Not that there were more, of course, more people in theory in the Lords at that time, quite a lot of whom didn't come. But you also had to put together cross-party coalitions. If you wanted to make a change to some government legislation, you'd get people from across the House, and you'd sit down in the library, you'd sit down in the bars with people of all parties. I
Yeah.
feel that since we've had large drafts of ex-MPs from the Commons, more and more it's become tribal. And you go into the
Yeah.
room where we have a cup of coffee or snack lunch, and there are tables, and you can say Tory, Labour, Lib Dem. They're sitting together, and one of the best things about the Lords is sitting at random, as you do at the long table, where you can't choose who you sit next to, and
Yeah.
there you find people actually you wished you'd known better, and you sat looking at them
Exactly.
for years, and you've got a lot in common and things you could do together. And that, I think, is the problem with these big drafts of new peers from one party. They're collegiate, and they are exclusive.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's something you could do. Set up a sort of every week, you could have a sort of tea party and say everyone can come and you have to sit next to someone like speed dating that you've never met before and have a 5-minute conversation. And when I ring the bell, you move on to the next one.
Well, in theory, that's how it should work. But I don't think, for example, the crossbenchers in the House are not ruled by anybody. They make their own decisions, so probably they wouldn't accept my invitation.
Okay.
But no,
Okay.
I try to do it. You have to be quite brave to go and sit at a table with a group of people from another party.
You do.
In some
You
cases, you
do.
do. You
But
make
I do feel MPs are and House of Lords, you are all quite brave people. I mean, to be able to stand up and do what you do and say what you say, I think you're very brave.
Well, we ought to be, and I think we are. What I find is also alarming at the moment is we've got a lot of very new peers, and they are really there. They came thinking they would talk about their subjects, many of them really well qualified and people you want to hear from, and
Yeah.
instead it becomes rapidly apparent that you're there as lobby fodder, and you are there to do what the whips tell you to do, and you're told to go and sit behind the minister because the House is a bit empty. So you are just bodies. And you're being told
Oh,
not
I
to speak very
see.
often. Please don't speak
What?
because they want to win the votes. Now, the whipping wasn't like that when I came into the House. And indeed, it had changed a bit, but not as much as a friend of mine who's just about to leave, about to be thrown out as a hereditary peer. When he came in, his whip told him, 3-line whip, you have to be here. If
Yeah.
you're in the bar and the division bell goes, you come along and you vote as I tell you. If you've been in the chamber and you've listened to the debate, you vote according to your conscience. Well, nobody is told that nowadays. You are
Oh,
expected to vote as you
wow.
are told by the whips. On my side, I can't speak for any other. I don't know how it
Yeah.
works. But
Yeah.
I think there are people I'm very well aware of who haven't been in the House very long who are finding it very frustrating because this was not what they had understood.
No,
But
I
it's
mean, that
changed.
sounds
Mm.
horrifically frustrating. Um, oh, goodness me. Well, should we step away from politics?
That would be
Because
nice.
we could talk about this for hours and hours, me and you. But, it's what we truly believe in. But, the whole point of this podcast is to talk about your rural life. And we're going to start with the person that really sort of started you off in the countryside and taught you about everything. Who was that?
Well, I think it must be my mother. I was always fascinated by farms. I didn't play with dolls. I played with model farms, which I loved, setting up fields and putting cattle in one and so all the rest of it. But
Yeah.
basically, my early life was living in suburbia, I have to say.
Yes.
Portsmouth, bit of Hampshire, but it was fairly built up. And then a little bit of time at Hampton Court. Then we moved out into the countryside when I was 9. And we had a little bit of land with a cottage. And my mother wanted a house cow. We had some pigs. And we had a couple of
A
calves.
house cow.
Yes, and
What does a house cow mean?
I'm very proficient at milking, I can tell you, every morning. But we did have somebody who came and did it most of the time. My mother never learnt, but I certainly did. So I did the days off.
It's quite a technique, I can imagine.
There was also a local farmer who was wonderful to the children, and he had a small council smallholding in the village of Ickford in Buckinghamshire, and
Yeah.
he was like a magnet for the children, all the children, and you'd go up to Alex Farm and help, and that, dealing with his calves, I loved that. I also remember my father taking me up to Scotland for a family holiday with John Mackey, who was a Labour, I think MP as I recall. He was certainly a strong Labour supporter, big
Yeah.
farmer, and loving the cattle that he had, Ayrshires, on his farm. And I came back just wanting more cows. Let's have more cows.
Scotland is such a wild
Mm.
place. I haven't been there too many times, but I every time I go there, you sort of look at the mass. You can just look for miles, can't you? And like the cows and the sheep, and it's a wonderful farming country, I guess. And you talk about animals. Is there a particular animal that has sort of stuck with you or taught you a lot about life?
Oh, the horse. No question
The
about it.
horse.
I,
Yeah.
I don't know why. Neither of my parents were horsey in any way, and no members of the family. But from the age of 4, all I wanted to do was learn to ride. And they did send me for some riding lessons locally near London.
Yeah.
And then when we moved to the country, desperate for a horse, saving money in a coffee pot, as I remember, with no hope of ever achieving enough money, even then.
Oh,
But my
that's
mother,
so
who
sweet.
knew nothing, went
Yeah.
into Tame Cattle Market and saw a little black pony standing there, which she bought for £20 and brought home. And I have to say, it was a little killer. It was in the market for very good reason. It did
I was
not
going to
like
say
anyone on its
£20 in
back.
the market. That doesn't sound good, does it?
No, well, luckily, what they did was to realise that it wasn't really safe, and they got somebody local to come in and sort it out. And for a
Yeah.
while he did, until it was left to me on my own, when quickly the pony Wandy got the upper hand. But early on, he took me out, and it was he who took me hunting for the first time. I
Oh,
remember him
really?
assuring my parents that he'd only take me to the first draw. But
Yeah.
from that first day, remember we met in Wheatley in Oxfordshire, and all I wanted to do was go hunting. I loved it, absolutely loved it. And
And which pack was that with?
that was with the old South Oxfordshire, who are now
Okay.
part, I think, of the Kimblewick, and much of their country would be unhuntable now. In Wheatley, you've got the
Yeah.
main A40 going through it. Very, very busy place.
Yeah. There's
But
so much country, hasn't it, that motorways have sort of gone straight
yes,
through.
yes,
I'm up in Warwickshire, and we've got the M40 that
mm,
basically cut the whole place in
yes.
half.
Well, much of my life was the Bicester country, which was where I moved. Well, I lived there, I suppose, from about the age of 25. And that has been diced in two by the HS2, a completely
Yes.
pointless
Oh,
white elephant that wouldn't even get the time of day of anybody now. And
I mean, that
time
is
and
a
time
huge
again,
problem. Yeah.
people wanting to call it in, too much money's been spent, we've got to go on. And there we are. And it's carved through farms and people I know all the way up the line. Awful.
Yeah.
There we
Yeah.
are.
So since your pony days of hunting, then have you always then kept a horse and obviously got your first horse when
Mm.
I don't know how old you were when you got your first horse, and
10,
then
I think,
where
the cattle market.
yeah,
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 all the way through Cambridge. I got at the age of 12, my parents realised this wasn't the right purchase. And
yeah.
somebody who I'd met, again through the hunting people, found me a very nice pony, Breeze. And Breeze lasted me right through university until I started at the bar when I could buy my first real hunter, which would have been, I suppose, in my early 20s. And
Yeah.
I've always had horses since, and I'm afraid I've still got rather more than I should.
Have you?
And some of them
So do you still hunt now?
well, I refuse to say I've given up, but I haven't been out this season. My old hunter has now finally, he's given up, age
Okay.
27,
Oh,
and I
wow.
was perfect, would let me stand on the hill and watch while people gallop past, and I gave
Yes.
up jumping some time back. But I've got a little cob who's actually rather strong out hunting, and I need the perfect pony, and then I shall go back. So I'm not giving up.
Oh my goodness, we've got to find you that perfect pony. We've got to find it. We've
Someone
got to.
must
You
have it
you
somewhere.
can't give up. You
I don't
absolutely
want to.
cannot give
No,
up.
I miss the people. I miss the places, and I so miss the hounds and seeing them work.
Yeah, yeah,
Fascinating to watch.
yeah. The people,
Mm,
like you said, for
mm,
for me, I moved from London to Warwickshire, and I knew nobody,
mm,
not a single soul. And I thought, how am I going to meet people? How am I even going to create my life here? And I went to a hunt coffee morning.
mm.
And within 1 week, I was I had been lent a horse by someone. Come on, come with us. You must get on. And suddenly I had a community of people that made me feel welcome. And this is something that people don't understand about the hunting community and
Also,
the
it's a
rural
community that's completely cross-class, which is not understood on my party. You get to know
Precisely.
the people who work on the farms, you get to know people who are the grooms, you get to know people
Yep.
who've got very little money, the pensioners who come out day after day. That's their main purpose in life, is to come
Well,
and
that's
follow
their
out.
day out. That's
Yeah,
their
it
day
is.
out.
And you get
Otherwise,
to
they
know,
don't see people.
and you get to know also the country. You look over a hedge from a car, you see a field, but if you've been hunting there, you know the way out on the far side, and you know there's a
Yep.
little wood there, and you know exactly what goes on beyond it, and you know who owns it. You know
Yep.
whose farm it
Totally.
is. Yeah.
Yeah. No, my husband, when we're driving somewhere and there's a traffic jam and I'm like, turn right, go left, down there, turn right. He's like, how on earth do you know where you're going? I'm like, hunting. You know, you learn where you are. You learn how to spot the tree with the big hole in, or the bridge, or whatever it is.
In my case,
Yeah.
the open gate. That's I was very good at spotting.
Oh, the open gates. Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. So we're going to move on to a place, and I wonder where your place is. And is it somewhere dramatic, or is it somewhere sort of? Is there a feeling that you get when you think about it? Where is your place that lives in you?
Well, it's Exmoor, which is where I now live. I started
Okay.
coming down here when I was at university, so in my late teens. A friend who lived down here invited me down. I used to come down probably once a year to borrow his mother's horse, so to go hunting here. Then I
Yes.
started coming every year, beginning and end of the season up country. I'd come down and got to know people. Eventually found a cottage, brought my family down when I had children. Every summer was spent down here. And finally, having bought a small farm here, I moved here full time about 6 or 7 years ago. There are drawbacks. Exmoor, as anybody who knows it in the winter knows, it rains heavily. It's never
Yes.
quite as sunny as it is up country where I used to be, which I do like the sun. The people are real people. They're not commuters who don't know their neighbours.
Yeah.
Their communities, people fight, let's face it, they do, and there are feuds over ridiculous little things. But if someone's in trouble, there'll be a lot of people to help, and you
Yeah.
don't ignore it. And no, it's a very special place, quite apart from being so beautiful. As I think ex-racehorse trainer years ago, Tim Foster, who had a house down here too, used to say, it's
Yeah.
so beautiful it makes you cry. And it is. And I drive to the
Oh.
supermarket over the most beautiful country, and I think no one could have a better drive to a supermarket than I have.
So do you get the train? Do you go when you go up to the House of Lords? Are you still commuting?
I am a commuter, and mostly I drive. I do use the train when I can, if I'm going for a
Yeah.
very short time, but I really can't bear to live in London or even stay in London. So I have a little barn I rent in
Yes.
the Chilterns, which was where I used to live most of the time,
Yeah.
and I drive back after the House of Lords. I go back there. I wouldn't
Okay.
see the friends. I mean, the friends that I made with Vista, the friends I made
Yeah.
with the Kimblewick, all my neighbours there, I wouldn't see them. I'd go straight up the M4. As it is, I divert now and I go up the M5 and I turn off and go through the Cotswolds, which I also love, although I've never lived
Yes.
there.
Yeah.
And I go that way. And it's friendship, really, and they're friendships that have lasted all my life. And if you suddenly move to somewhere as slightly remote as I am now, you've got to persuade them to come, but of course they don't all, and then you'd lose touch. So keeping in touch with the friends I made, all those country
It
people,
sounds like
wonderful.
you are non-stop, absolutely non-stop all the time. I don't know how you have the energy to do that, but it's quite remarkable. Now,
Luck.
with all your sort of country living and also heading into London all the time, is there a smell or sound that sort of instantly transports you? You know, when you're driving back from London, do you open the window and think, oh, thank goodness I'm back in the countryside? Is there one smell that hits you?
Well, I can remember very vividly when I was a barrister practicing criminal courts in London, getting out of the tube at the Oval on a dark evening, must have been autumn. It was autumn.
Oh, so depressing.
I suddenly got the smell of what must have been a bonfire. How, I don't know. And I
Yeah.
thought, that's it. I want to be somewhere where I can smell the bonfires and feel the frost and all that.
Yes.
So that's certainly true. I mean, I have to say, there are times now when spring, which is perhaps a bit more appealing, I always used to go and play on my iPad or my phone the poem April Rise, which was written, as I recall, by the author as he sat on a London bus in Victoria. And it's about
Oh.
April in the Cotswolds. And I always thought how wonderful he must have been there experiencing it. No, he was missing it. That was
Oh,
what
he was
why he wrote it,
missing it.
missing it in the town where it wasn't. And that's the
Yeah.
trouble. Of course, you see the changes in the park. You see the daffodils are up long before they ever appear in Exmoor. But it's not
Yes.
the same, I'm afraid. It doesn't have the same smells and not the same surprises that hit you when you see the violets, as I do right now, all the way along the hedge.
Yeah. No, it's so true. Now you're a farmer, and you're also obviously, you've done your day's hunting. Has there been a day when you've thought, "Oh my God, this weather is truly unbearable," or you've been stuck in some horrendous storm somewhere, in a particular season, or maybe there's been a day in a lovely season, in the summer season, where it's suddenly become winter overnight?
Happens here very, very regularly, as those who go out will tell you. I can
Yeah.
remember one day with the Bicester. I mean, the rain here is like nothing else. People tape up with tape their rubber trousers around their boots so that the water doesn't run in. But Bicester, I remember riding back one day with 3 friends in terrible weather, and the only way we could keep going was singing "Onward, Christian Soldiers." But the
Onward,
best thing, of
Christian
course,
soldiers, marching side by side. That's
after that, though, the
brilliant.
best thing is to get into the bath, and your legs then are the colour of lobsters. Lobster
Oh,
legs, the result of being cold and wet, but a
no,
wonderful feeling.
when you get so wet out hunting or riding, or even when you're farming, and your skin goes that sort of see-through color,
Yeah.
and then you get in the bath and it makes it even worse, and you think, are my fingers going to drop off? This is not good.
But the best sort of tiredness is after a day like that. You've had the
Oh,
adrenaline, the excitement, you've had the
yeah.
physical tiredness. There's nothing better. Perfect end to a perfect day.
How's your lambing season going? Are you sort of feeling that physical
Well,
tiredness
I've
yet?
been very lucky this year that days gone by, I used to try to do it all myself. I didn't have
Yeah.
quite as many sheep. I haven't got a huge number. These people who do thousands, it's a completely different business. But I know my sheep. I've
Yes.
lambed about, I suppose there are about 80 this year. And I
Wow.
luckily had some help at night. But do I enjoy doing it still? I love it when it goes well. I hate it when it goes badly. And of course, it is
Yeah.
triumph and disaster all the time. Most of them have lambed now, and they're out in the field looking very happy, even though the weather isn't quite as I'd like it. But there's still a few to go, and I find myself worrying. I wake up in the night thinking, should I have done this, or should I do that, or should I go down
Yeah.
and check now? But I still enjoy it. But I think there will come a time when I don't want to be catching a sheep. I don't
Yeah.
want to be, as the other day,
It's pretty physical, isn't it?
it's physical too. I
Yeah,
find just extracting a lamb sometimes takes all your physical strength.
exactly.
Um,
Or
uh,
trying to catch the ewe, I remember as a
mm,
child, and my grandmother had a sheep farm, and she would say, "Right, go and get that ewe," and
mm,
you're trying to tackle this thing to the ground. And I remember being butted out the way and
mm.
whacked and winded, and oh my goodness,
I
it is
can't do
really
that.
physical.
Can't do that now. I have to go and get hurdles and generally pen the sheep into smaller and smaller places till I've got it.
Get in that corner.
Yes. Mm, mm.
Ah. So we are going to move on to a piece of music, or or a sound, and for anyone that is a hunting person, I think they will really understand and appreciate your choice for this today. What was your choice?
Hard choice. Gone away
Yeah,
is what I've chosen, which is the sound when the fox used to go away from the cover and when
yeah.
the hounds start hunting. But it's also so often the end of a funeral of someone you cared about.
Oh,
And the sound of that going through a church, total silence, but the sound echoing off the walls, wonderful. But
I've got
also,
shivers. Look, my hair's standing on end already.
it literally does. But
Yeah.
also, I love blowing for home, which is the end. Very, very, very long note that requires more breath than I certainly would ever have had. Beautiful note. The end of the day. That's lovely too.
Yeah.
I've chosen the one that has the excitement attached to something's going to happen.
To get
Well,
that heartbeat going.
yeah. Yes.
Yeah, no, it's a wonderful. It's sort of stuck in the countryside. I remember one day I was standing outside my kitchen door, and it was just the sun was just going down, and we live sort of the woods are, back behind our house, and I suddenly heard this calling for home on the hunting horn. And I just stood outside, and you just can't help but stop and just listen to this
No,
magical
imagine.
sound. There was no other sound, and it was just that, and it just made me smile. It just makes you so happy, doesn't it? Well, we're coming to the end of our conversation, and I just can't thank you enough. But there is one more thing that I'd love to ask you, and that is a sort of closing reflection. And what does the countryside mean to you now, at this stage of your life? What are your sort of hopes for it?
Well, my hope is that the distinct difference is preserved. And it's very, very hard to see given the number of threats, the amount of building that's going on, the way the countryside is being eaten up, the number of different requirements that the countryside is now being asked to meet, whether it's energy, whether it's recreation, whether it's building. I mean, it goes on and on and on. But I desperately hope that the small family farms continue and that it doesn't, I'm afraid, see them driven out of business and their land used for all sorts of other purposes other than food and taken over by large-scale industrial farming. I mean, they are the backbone of these communities, and they are so precious. I have been very, very lucky. Things change. I can see they changed in the 20s and 30s. Enormous change when the car came in, when people were motorized, and it wasn't all done at the speed of a horse. And we've seen an enormous change in my lifetime with technology and what that's done, but also the demands of a huge population on a small island. And I shall be so sad if my grandchildren don't have the opportunity to know what I have. They'll have different opportunities, of course, but that has been so, so precious.
Yeah. And, as a rural community, how do we move forward when we have these pressures on us? It is so important, isn't it, for us all to stick together and to stand united.
Well, I'm afraid a lot of it is education, and it's just letting people, and also it's tolerance. I find people far less tolerant than they were. You may not approve of what someone does or the way they behave, but now the touchiness, particularly of the next generation, if anything's slightly offensive, you mustn't say it. Well, I've always felt you need to be offended at least 3 times before lunch, or your day is not. It makes you think. It makes you stop and question your views and theirs, and argue it. But you're not allowed to say or do so many things now that somebody thinks might be wrong for some reason known to them. We've got to be a more tolerant nation than we are at the moment, certainly.
Well, I think humanity, isn't it? We've got to all just be more open.
Well, or we will become automatons doing exactly what we're told and leave all the decisions to somebody else.
Yeah, a world of robots.
We need more arguing, more offence, and more changes of mind by people who otherwise are set in ways which may well be wrong.
Yeah. Well, thank you for everything that you do for all of us that live and breathe rural life. We will all keep fighting for the future of our wonderful country and the people in it. Thank you for listening or watching. Please share and subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. I will see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.